Introduction. I am the child of 3 gay parents. The first was my notorious father, Walter Breen. In 1989, I turned my father in to the police after witnessing him molest an underage boy. He died in jail after being sentenced to 13 years in San Quentin. The second was my famous mother. Marion Zimmer Bradley was an award-winning science fiction author with a history of poverty and heinous abuse from her drunken father, and a life she tried to fill with charity and love. During an unhappy marriage, she found her true love in my father, a paranoid, schizophrenic, polymath genius, and lifelong pedophile. During her 27-year involvement with him, my mother both abetted and participated in his crimes. The third was my mother's former lover, Elizabeth Waters, who I was taught to call my stepmother. These days, however, Lisa prefers to pretend she is nothing but my, quote, cousin, which begs the question, what on earth was my cousin doing in my mother's bed? More than that, why would she dishonor my mother's memory by denying the substance of their 20-year relationship? Elizabeth spent 2 decades at Marion's side and in her bed, and helped her cover up some of Walter's crimes. She has tried to whitewash my mother's history, pretending that my mother was a church-going Episcopalian, when in fact Marion was a pagan priestess who was happiest when she was leading occult rituals. My mother's story is ultimately a tragic one, even though some of the tragedy came in the form of the tragedies she inflicted on other people. Can my mother be blamed for acting as she did, given the horrors she herself lived through? I believe that regardless of the pain one endures, we are all responsible for our own actions, and she must be responsible. After all, one might expect that enduring abuse would lead any reasonable person to not want to subject anyone else to it. The reality of gay relationships is nothing like what we are led to believe. As a child, I was expected to approve and champion them as gay parents, even though they were parents who rejected each other and rejected me. I was supposed to become a lesbian and even to cooperate with their efforts to make me become one, but I always knew that I was not supposed to talk about that reality, let alone oppose it. They made it clear that exposing others to the truth would be the worst thing I could ever do to them. It would be an unconscionable personal betrayal. One wonders why simply telling the truth about my life and theirs would be considered a betrayal unless there really was something wrong with what they were doing. In our culture, closets go far beyond sexual choices or identity. They represent what we are not allowed to want. The difference between who we are and who we must pretend to be is contained in a closet. The closet to which I am referring involves the depths of my very soul. Throughout my life, I have had to cope with living in a series of closets. I could not admit to my parents that I wanted to be a girl because they thought girls were disgusting. I had to hide my femininity away, as though I had been born sexless. I could not tell my parents that I was interested in boys because they wanted a gay child. I had to hide my conventional dreams of a family and a white picket fence away, and hope I would not be found out. I couldn't even ask for something as simple as a doll, because a doll represented the traditional gender roles they hated, and would make them think I wanted to be like one of those girls they found so disgusting. I could never tell my parents that their revolving door of sexual insanity made me wish that I was dead. I could never, ever admit my opposition to the way they chose to live. My feelings, my anguish, and my pain all had to be locked safely away in a closet. Throughout my childhood, I just wanted my mother and father to love each other, to love me, and to stop bringing other people home for sex. I wanted to live in a normal family where no one would hurt me and expect me to regard it as freedom. What is the last closet? It is the last thing I am not supposed to be allowed to think or to feel. It is the bundle of facts that led me to oppose gay marriage and non-traditional relationships. I know from personal experience that these relationships are social constructs, which exist to create sexual anarchy and to confuse sex with love. Since sex is good, freedom is good, and love is good, sexual libertines believe we should provide sex, freedom, and love all to our children. And then hope they don't kill themselves as a result. There are many people who would like to believe that my mother was not aware of my father's crimes, especially the fans of her fiction. But this is not true. She wrote a book involving a man-boy love story when she was 19, The Catch Trap, and she edited Greek Love, my father's treatise on pederasty, and wrote a companion article for it. Her own court testimony clearly demonstrates her knowledge of his sexual relationships with young boys. Also, in the public record is her defense of him during the 1963 Breendoggle scandal in the science fiction world, where they were newly involved. So, it should be apparent to even her most staunch defenders that she was no victim, but rather my father's partner in crime. And then, there's also the fact that she herself molested both my brothers and me. Although my father was a child molester himself, and I doubt he would have objected to any of the sexual acts my mother imposed on us, I am convinced that he objected strongly to her brutality. I feared her and loved him. One might remark, flippantly, that he was only a serial rapist while she was a violent, icy monster whose voice caused my stomach to twist up with fear. How can I paint my father as a villain when he was the one who comforted me after my mother's assaults? It is impossible that my mother was never capable of controlling her temper or her sexual desires enough to prevent the violence she committed. I question the completeness of this view, however, because a person who commits crimes while enraged normally expresses some modicum of remorse for them afterwards. I never saw a shred of that from her. I'm not writing this book because I am looking for sympathy, nor do I need anyone to confirm or support what I have written in the pages that follow. My experience is my own, and I am primarily speaking to those unfortunates who have shared an experience that is similar to mine. You may see yourself in these pages, or you may not. My hope is to bring a measure of healing to all who need it. Throughout this book, I have forced myself to occasionally call Walter Breen my father, instead of Walter, as had been my usual habit. My brother changed his name from Patrick Russell Donald Breen to Mark Greyland, as an understandable way to distance himself from our father, whom he now more customarily calls Beardo the Weirdo. They were once close, but I cannot blame my brother for now wanting to deny that they were even related. In this book, I have only talked about my recollections that I have some way to independently corroborate. In a few cases, I have mentioned something that my mother or someone else told me they had seen or done. While I have omitted a number of events that I still clearly recall, the reason is that I cannot provide any material evidence to support those recollections. Regardless, coming out of the last closet means I am finally free to tell the truth about my life. If you are still trapped in a closet, I hope you will someday feel the same freedom to tell the truth about your own. Moira Greyland.